revolution. Bitcoin is immune from attack.
We are gathered here today in this Museum of Bitcoin at the North American Bitcoin Conference. Kingsley Edwards and Lyn Ulbricht and myself, Chuck Williams, we have a shared story. And this story relates to the drug war in America. I know that me personally, I've been affected by this drug war. My father spent some time in jail, and I had to be sent to my aunt to live for a period of time as a child, not knowing what was really going on. Not knowing until many years later that my dad was being put in prison for marijuana possession for a period of time. And basically taking him out of my life and creating a string of abandonment issues in myself and things that I had to work through. I'm finding myself a little bit choked up saying that, because that's the truth. Kingsley Edwards, you have a similar story that's much more painful and devastating. And I think, Lyn, they know a lot of your story. You want to tell us yours?
Yeah, sure. In 1993, I think I was 8 years old then, my father, growing up, he had some issues with drugs and both, mostly, doing it and also, and then he got involved with selling. And it was, it was Florida back in the day, the cocaine cowboy type of day. So there was a lot of people who were kind of going through this or experiencing this at the time. Anyway, he ended up, basically kind of rehabilitating himself. He had gone to prison before, and he got out. He had an ex-girlfriend that ended up, he became reacquainted with, and she actually, the police turned her, and actually, and apparently, my father, he wasn't involved with that scene anymore once he got out, and she had basically talked him into getting about $850 worth of cocaine for her, now that she had been flipped by the police. And then, so he ended up doing that, unfortunately. And
so if I'm hearing you right, the police engaged with your father's ex-girlfriend,
right,
and turned her.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by turned her?
So, they got her to basically, it was a setup. It was a setup.
Okay, they framed your father.
Yeah.
The police colluded with a woman to frame your father for drugs.
Right.
For possession.
Right. So, the story is that they were at his place, and she went into, she had done this, and apparently, he was trying to get out of that whole scene, but he wanted to kind of just do something for her. So he got, I guess, in touch with his old contacts and kind of, got the cocaine there. She went into the bathroom of his place and then called the cops, and they raided him and then took him away.
So they were prepared.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They were prepared to confiscate your father from his family. And why? Why do you think that they were motivated to do this?
Again, it was, 93. I think now, thankfully, that the kind of the tide is changing slowly but surely in a better direction. But it's very, big war on drugs, was a big thing back then, and still is today, unfortunately. So it happened. They took him. They offered him actually 15 years when he went to court if he pled guilty, and I forget exactly the full story behind that, but he thought that was too much at that time. Which it is for what happened. So he pled not guilty, and they told him that we're basically going to throw the book at you, and we're going to give you the max that we can give you.
The prosecutors.
Yeah.
Okay, because prosecutors decide that, don't they?
Yes, they do.
They decide a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're probably well aware about the prosecutorial process
right.
now.
Yeah, it's very convoluted. So he ended up, getting 60 years for $850 worth of cocaine, which is basically a life sentence. He's already been in there. This was 93. He's already been in there for over 25 years. This was when I was 8 years old. I'm 33 years old now. So I grew up without a father because of the system, really, that in the way that it was set up. And even his ex-girlfriend, a year or so later, this is someone who has met his mother, who's my grandmother's one of the most sweetest, nicest ladies ever. She actually ended up committing suicide about a year or two after this had happened because she had set them up because she felt so bad about it.
So, the woman who was helping the police committed suicide? Presumably over the guilt of this situation.
Yeah, she was very upset. She, called my grandmother his mother, and would always, I guess, cry hysterically because of what she had done. And it was I believe too that she ended up getting flipped because she had got caught too. So they do that.
Oh sure, yeah. I mean, she would probably have some motivation to get herself out of the same kind of situation that they inevitably put your father into.
Right.
I just like to say I've heard stories, many stories, of how the prosecutors will bully and threaten and even lie about what the consequences to get people to do this.
Yes, I've witnessed that myself.
So now, 25 years later, we've met. In 2016, we met with the Clemency board. Basically, clemency is one of. There's a couple options still left on the table. But my father's been trying to,
Because he's exhausted all of his appeals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Went through a bunch of things throughout the years. Had always, got denied or rejected. Now we filed for clemency. I think it was in 2014, I believe. And the funny thing too about this whole thing is that the clemency board here in Florida, they have a budget of I think it's $1 million or more a year, and yet they're behind 5 years. So now they're just getting to my father's case and other people's case.
I have seen the government be very skilled at using bureaucratic methods to bury people in under paperwork and not get addressed. It sounds like this is happening to you as well. I mean, the DMV is bad enough, right? Imagine the prison system.
Right.
Go on.
So we filed that in 2014, and in 2016, actually, my father, he was just like, enough is enough. Every day, that's the thing that a lot of people can't really appreciate, is that every day is a struggle, when you're locked up like this. So we think, even myself, I've been in the position where it's like, okay, well maybe next year, Dad, or whatever. And it's, you don't think like, okay, that is 365 days of being locked up, away from your family, your friends, from being free. So every day is hard for these, all these people.
But what do you say to those skeptics who say, look, we need this drug war to protect our citizens from dangerous criminals? Who, they owe it to society. They need to pay their debt to society.
Right. Well, I think even those people, and a lot of those people can agree that what my father's sentence and Ross's too, it's even if you're on that side of the argument, 25 years is enough. I mean,
still excessive.
Right. Yeah, a bit excessive. And we have letters from the prosecutor, the judge, state representatives, all saying the same thing, like, hey, the crime or the time doesn't fit the crime. It's enough is enough.
Could I say something about that too? What to say to people about we have.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your response on that.
The drug war doesn't work, plain and simple. It's been going on for over 45 years, over $1 trillion with a T dollars of taxpayer money. People are still using drugs. They can't even keep drugs out of the prison, okay?
Right.
It does not work. It promotes violence, just like it did with alcohol prohibition.
Sure, yes.
And the cartels are thriving, and the gangs are fighting over turf because of the drug war.
Right.
You're not going to find Smirnoff vodka and Absolute having a turf war on the street over who's getting that vodka, because it's not illegal.
Right.
Yes.
And so, come on, let's do something that works. And also, the government knows it doesn't work.
Right.
So what's their motivation? Okay, let's think. What is the gain? They're making tons of money off of these people in prison, which you could call human trafficking. And because they're making money off of them, there's huge numbers of subsidiary industries, from the vending machines to the maintenance of the prisons, to the building of the prisons, and then you get up into lawyers and blah, blah, blah. Money and power, because if it's a drug case, it's called the drug exception, and the Constitution is like, well, it's a drug case. We don't have to worry about the Fourth Amendment. We don't have to worry about those things because it's drugs, and that weakens all of our protections in lots of cases, not just drug cases.
Yeah, yeah. I've given this a lot of thought, and I feel like there's a chasm in our society. People use drugs as a way to punish people, and there are a lot of people who feel the need to control other people and punish other people, and I think that those people who have that need to control aren't able to see that, yes, the prohibition, it didn't work. Prohibition just doesn't work.
Never.
You have to, you can't think that you can control human consumption of nature.
There's a huge financial incentive. It makes actually drug dealing very lucrative.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it makes it better for the cartels.
Yeah.
If you want
Yeah.
a war to stop in any kind of war zone, my current understanding is that you get those groups to trade. And essentially the only reason drugs are a bad thing or are expensive is because they are illegal.
That's exactly. And
Just
Donald
generally.
Trump said that in 1990. He said, if you want to stop drugs, don't make it legal.
Legalize
because there's all
everything.
this financial. He's a very practical guy, but whatever has influenced him now, it's just obvious.
But don't you
It's
know
historically
that
proven.
that the idea of releasing control or allowing people to take drugs or put drugs or whatever they want to do with their bodies, that brings fear to those people. How do you address
I think it's
that?
a power grab. I think fear, but I think that's where the people who say, well, we have to be protected. I understand that. They don't understand it doesn't work.
Yeah.
They're not being protected. But as far as the people instigating the drug war, I think it's more about power grab and money grab.
And your father, marijuana possession. I mean, I'm from Las Vegas. Now marijuana is legal.
Right.
Yes.
So it's
Right.
just like,
It's
depends on what day it is, I guess. What they believe or what they feel is moral or not moral.
So-
and also there's a guy in prison with Ross who's doing life for marijuana that an informant said he sold him 13 years ago. And the prison's in Colorado, where it's legal,
Right.
but it's a federal prison.
Right.
So he's got a life sentence for marijuana.
And there's
This
an
is
institution
insane.
built up around these bodies, as they refer to them,
Absolutely.
or freight,
Freight.
as they sometimes refer
Yeah.
to them, right?
Yeah.
These people who are essentially being enslaved to do various kinds of work, to receive the beatings of prison wardens, to basically suffer day in, day out for $850 crimes.
And the
with
taxpayers are footing the bill, by
Yeah.
the
The
way.
taxpayers are footing the bill.
$2 trillion.
Yeah, 30,000 per.
30,000
$2 million for
per
a life
prisoner.
sentence.
Yeah,
Per
per
year.
year.
Yeah,
That's
per prisoner per year. That's a lot of money to be spending on somebody who
Nonviolent.
is nonviolent. And even if, I get really frustrated about this situation, right?
It's
because
outrageous,
it
it's
affects
un-American.
so many lives, so many people, time and time again. I know that you've told your story a lot, but before we get to you, Lynn, I want to
I'm
make
just
sure.
chiming in on the criminal
Yeah,
justice
so
system. I'm
today,
sorry, I'm just gonna,
you're 25 years without a dad, essentially. You barely have any memories of spending time with him when you were a child, right?
And I've only been able to visit him behind bars.
Yeah. So that is your experience with your dad,
Yeah.
essentially, because the government has caged him for $850. His, ex-girlfriend has committed suicide. Like, these government injections into your life are a black swan event.
And they've never even rehabilitated him. He had to do that himself in prison. So he never even, one day they haven't said, hey, we'll send you someplace where you get rehabilitated, get your addiction or fix your addiction.
Kingsley, I thought it was correctional. I thought
Yeah.
they're correctional institute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what they
Yeah, I
said.
guess that depends on your definition of correction.
Correctional.
Right.
So that's where you're at now. You've got clemency as your only option.
So we hope that his paperwork is now reach. 5 years later, is going to reach the top of the pile. They really don't even let you know. I call. My father has, sent letters saying, hey, give my son access to my file and all this stuff. I've called one time where they would give me more information that I needed. Call again, a week later, a year later, whatever, and they'd say, oh, you're not on the list or whatever. I've been there with people who were on the list. The whole system's just messed up, the way that they run it. But you know, hopefully, you know, we're positive this year that something is going to happen, you know, through legal means. So we're hoping that, especially we have a new governor here in Florida. Rick Scott was pretty notoriously bad when it came to clemency for prisoners, regardless if they're nonviolent or not. Actually, there's a whole other story where, you know, someone who was a violent prisoner got let go because they knew the right people, and way before, you know, for much worse crime and you know, before my father. So you know, here we are, another year, another day passes, and it's really hard, you know, even sitting in here, just realizing that this is what my father has had to experience for, you know, most of his life now, almost half of his life. Right. He's still young. But,
so, if you could say something to these audience, these people, these thousands of people who will likely watch this video, what do you think is necessary from your experience? What needs to change in this society? How can we fix this issue?
I think we really, I mean, if you are for the drug war, I mean, really please look into it and consider it. It doesn't work. So it doesn't matter whether you think it's a good idea or not. I mean, the facts now remains that it's a failed war.
It is absolutely just not working.
Right.
And anybody who argues against that and says it is working, well, they must be lying or selling something, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can think.
Or blind. You know, so.
Right. Ignorant.
And then, you know, work how you can through your state even, you know, and try to, if marijuana, for instance, is going to be up on, you know, the next political calendar for when you need to vote, you know, try to get people to at least push that. I feel like that's, at least we're getting there, right? It is a start. So it's good. And then, you know, for me personally, you know, we're just, if you'd like, maybe we can put something up here or whatever, but the Clemency Board, especially if you're a Florida resident, means even more than anybody. You know, reaching out to in a nice way, reaching out to the Florida Clemency Board or the governor, and if anybody has any connections with any of these people, relationships, you know, personally reach out to me and let's get this going.
And what's your father's name?
You have a petition.
Yeah. You're right. Correct. Yeah, we have a. My father's name is Michael Edwards.
Okay.
And our petition is on change.org. We have I think over 5,000 signatures so far. So we need to get it basically up to like 100,000 or more.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's really what we're going to be working on, getting the word out. And you know, our story is just one of many, and the whole idea is like, hey, we want to help all these people. Like I just ran the numbers actually, I think last week, on how many people are incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses. It's like 400,000, 500,000 people. 500,000 people. I mean, there's nations out there with, you know, even higher populations that don't even have that many people total, including violent criminals.
And you're just saying non-violent, right?
Right.
These are 400, 500, almost 500,000 people. Yeah. What, every year now, or just in prison right now?
Yeah, that's
our prison population.
The
non-violent.
Over 17,000 have life for non-violent.
For non-violent crimes.
Yeah.
I can't, and it's extremely frustrating to me because, to me, the whole purpose of having a prison is to remove dangerous people from society. And if the only danger is themselves, for things that have existed for as long as humanity has existed, I mean, you can go back in history and see that the Greeks took drugs, the Romans took drugs. Like, drugs have been a part of humanity, and there's a long and lurid story associated with that, but prisons have never solved that problem. And now we're just making it worse by removing elements of our society that probably would be the best people, in my opinion, to tell a story of recovery and self-correction, and how to bring self-awareness, right? And I think that's what Ross is really doing right now in prison also. He's been in for 5 years for essentially building a website, right? How do you tell your story to, you know, people and this drug war?
Well, we've covered a lot of it. I mean, it doesn't work. It's un-American, plain and simple. Before the drug war, I think the prison population stayed at a steady 180,000. When I was growing up, nonviolent people didn't get life. That was just unheard of. Very few people got life sentences.
Right.
Manuel Noriega who is, kill people and drug. He got 17 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean,
Crazy.
my father, he sees, murders and rapists get out every day when
Right.
he's still locked up. It's like,
Don't you feel safer now?
Yeah, what's going on? Yeah.
So exactly, and it's just horrendous. It's un-American. It's terribly unjust, and it doesn't solve anything.
Right.
And like you said, I think it's a really good point. Who's better to talk about? Hey, don't break the law, don't all of this, than people who paid the price.
Right.
And they, you tend to get it pretty fast. It's not like you need a lifetime to get it, or 25 years, essentially a lifetime. And the other thing is, I visited the prisons a lot. I visit them regularly for 5 years now. I get to know the families. I get to know the kids. I see the kids, like Kingsley was, visiting their dads and being pried away, crying, sobbing when they're leaving, damaged, hurt, wounded kids.
Oh, yes.
There's 2.9 million of them in this country with an incarcerated parent, and statistics show that, unlike Kingsley, they are probably going to end up in prison too.
Yeah, it's like 80%, I believe.
Yeah, very high likelihood, indeed.
And so there's a lot of collateral damage here. Kingsley's represents that.
Right.
Children, families. I had a mother say to me, before this happened, my kids were getting straight A's, now everything's falling apart. It's just the evil of it, and it doesn't accomplish anything. And we're talking about people who made mistakes, okay, or had an addiction problem, or what, but yeah, it's a very evil, money-making, power-grabbing machine.
Yes.
Plain and simple.
And that's how I see it. I think
That's what it is.
The biggest problem here is that, we are using the population of our people to fill a system that is essentially enslaving the people, abusing the people, and not rehabilitating them to bring them back as productive members of society.
It's actually a criminal training program.
Indeed, yes.
You go in and and you learn. You gotta learn because you're going to survive in there.
And it represents the values of America in this. I mean, if you really believe that the legal system or the judicial system or the government itself is supposed to be a mirror of our values, well, I mean, I was looking at this whole conversation reminds me when I was, I believe, in 9th grade. I did a research project on. I learned that to derail a train is punishable by death. This is on the books. No matter the contents, if you derail a train intentionally, you can be put to death. This is a federal law. And at the same time, I had a friend who was being molested by a step-parent. And I looked into the laws, and the worst that was going to happen to that parent was maybe 6 months to 2 years in prison. Maybe. That's only if they got caught. They only had a 20% chance of even ending up in court. And if they ended up in court, they only had a 10% chance of actually going to jail for the molestation of a child.
And messing
There is a
up.
victim there.
Absolutely.
And how, I mean, $850 of drugs put into your body, you're going to go serve a life sentence?
And murderers are getting out. And this disparity of sentencing is a problem, which is actually demonstrated on this wall, because the biggest drug seller on SilkRoad got 10 years. The guy running SilkRoad 2 is free. He never did any time. And Ross gets double life plus 40. This disparity of sentencing is actually against what the sentencing, I forget the name of the bill, but Congress passed a bill saying, no, sentences have to be relatively the same for the same conduct. No, well, I guess that doesn't matter.
Right. It's being ignored. Right.
So there's so much injustice
and
unfairness going on.
And it empowers, the drug war just empowers actually authoritarianism, which is anti-American.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And also the police state too. I mean, a large percentage of police's day or career is focused on nonviolent drug crimes and other crimes too, nonviolent.
Oh, I know, and to me that mentality just expands itself. If I can get this drug criminal in behind bars, well, it's just a small step to just sit on a corner and ping people all day for doing 5 miles over a speed limit and collect money for the state.
It's a notch in your belt. I mean, it's a way to get promoted. It's because it's equal to getting a murder. You know, you still that notch in your belt.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely. What would you rather do? Go arrest a pot dealer, or track down a killer?
Yeah.
I think which would be
That's
easier.
my whole thing. Is like let's reallocate those resources and refocus them to violent criminals. Because I think we can all agree that that's where their focus should be.
Indeed.
Well, Neil Franklin said there's been a decrease in arresting violent criminals because all of their resources are going toward these easier drug offenses. And he's a long time, he's, a LEAP. He's a Law Enforcement Action Partnership. He was an officer for 30 years, and he's totally against the drug war. He said it doesn't work, causes danger, and violent crimes are not being solved because of the resources.
So, you've been at this a long time. Your life has been completely upended.
Yes.
As a mother to a son whose life has been stolen by the government, essentially. And I gotta tell you, as a web developer, I was scared when I learned what happened to Ross. Because he essentially built a website where people can sell things. And I can't tell you the number of times I had an idea to build a website where people sell things. And allowed people to sell whatever they want. I had an idea for doing something like eBay when eBay was coming out. What? I just didn't understand how this could happen to a web developer.
Yeah,
essentially.
A 26-year-old guy who was all about freedom and privacy and Bitcoin.
Right.
And hey, if it's not hurting anybody else, kind of thing. You should be able to do this. It's an idealistic thing, but it's like, yeah.
I'm sorry to I don't want to derail, but I wanted to make sure that you were able to say, you've been at this, you've seen this, you know what this is about, you see the problems. How can we fix this? What can we do in our society to change this issue? Other than just, calling for an end to the drug war, it's such a big problem.
Yeah. They have a lot invested in having that drug war.
Indeed.
It's very lucrative.
So what do you think the practical steps that people can take, like individuals?
Gosh, the First Step Act did get passed. Now, unfortunately, it's not retroactive. So all these people I know in the prison who thought they were getting out, because of the First Step Act, found out it didn't apply to them. So they still have their life sentences, even though if someone gets arrested today, they get 25 years instead of life.
Okay.
This is based on the evil third strike law of Clinton's. But in any case, I don't have a lot of faith in the political system, but they're the ones that, Congress is the ones who tells the courts, that this is how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think if there's enough push, and there was for the First Step Act, and it is just a first step, it definitely is just a first step, but there is a bipartisan push, both sides of the aisle. It's become like you were saying, it's become a really timely topic, and as, that's what I'm thinking. Of course I consider, both our cases, support us, sign our petitions, because the more, these are cases that are individual that could make the point. These are examples of excessive sentencing. This sentencing is terrible.
Yeah.
The problem for us is that, our loved ones' lives are ticking away while we try to move these very, hard things forward. It takes so much time.
Yeah.
We need to take advantage of the momentum right now.
But there is momentum. And I think that people tell me the court of public opinion matters, and I think it does.
So you both have websites, you both have petitions, freeross.org, and I'm sorry.
We have Free Michael Now.
freemichaelnow.org.com?
We're on Facebook right now. We're redoing the website.
So look for the Free Michael Now brand, Google that, people will be able to find you. I want to thank you both for sharing your story today. I know that this is a very serious issue that affects everybody in America.
Hundreds of thousands of people.
Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions in the cascading
effects. If the prison
effects.
population were a state, it's bigger than 11 states.
Yeah.
It's become part of our country.
That's not nothing, and it needs to be dealt with. And it's only getting worse as long as
They're building prisons.
Yeah.
Indeed.
It's a big black star on the flag, basically.
Right.
That's a really good point. It really is. Yeah. And here we are sitting in a facsimile of a cell. And it's really interesting to be here doing this thing because you realize, wow, this really brings it home.
This is the life of a lot of these people. Well.
And it accomplishes very little, or if nothing.
Right. Yeah. Lyn, Ulbricht, Kingsley Edwards, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.